On today's Locked On Texans podcast, the Houston Texans and New England, they're in the news again. Find out why. And no, you don't have to be mad. And we also speak with USC safety Isaiah Polamalu on his journey to the NFL. And we end up with a very interesting conversation about what Houston should do with edge rushers or who is the best in this class. But first, Cody, it's Tuesday, Taco Tuesday. Start the countdown.
You are Locked On Texans, your daily Houston Texans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, everybody, to a Tuesday edition of the Locked On Texans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, John Silver Sports Guy Hickman, joined by Sports Illustrated's own Cody Davis. And let's go right into it. Of course, I mentioned in the cold opening that we are speaking with another NFL draftee, so that'll be a very fun conversation. But the Houston Texans and New England agree to trade. New England will be sending their fifth-round pick to the Houston Texans for the 6th and 7th round picks of this year's draft. And for Houston, they will be receiving that 5th round. Remember, they did not have a 5th round draft pick, but they will be receiving pick 170 this upcoming weekend for the 2022 draft. Now, it's very interesting, Cody, that this happens because remember on yesterday's show, and if you guys have not checked out Monday edition, please go ahead and do that. But remember we talked about towards the end of the show, teams' draft boards and how they do their own mock draft, right? And there's an interesting clip circulating Twitter right now where Matt Rule was going through players that they may want to take last year when they drafted J.C. Horn that could be available around the time where they were drafted in Carolina. And teams traditionally do that. They do their own mock drafts. And, you know, I mentioned on yesterday's show that, hey, guys, listen, just like we do mock drafts and we play around with player availability throughout the draft, NFL teams do that as well. And it does seem like this move for Houston was made for two reasons. Number one, you definitely want to get a 5th round pick. And if you're able to find a team that'll give you their 5th round pick in exchange for 6 and 7, you pull the trigger on that trade. And then I just can't help but think that the Houston Texans have a player that's pretty high on their draft board that they believe that they can get around the 5th round, around pick 170.
I love this trade because my only concern for the Texans going into this year's draft was the fact that they did not have a 5th round draft pick. Now that is taken care of. But John, one of my biggest takeaways from this deal is the fact that Nick Caserio isn't going to downplay the undrafted free agents. And this is actually something that he had an opportunity to talk about last week during his pre-draft press conference that we all had an opportunity to sit in on. And he talked about it like, look, there's only a certain number of players who are actually going to get drafted. However, when you take a look at the players who don't go drafted, when you take a look at the players who are going to be free agents, there are still a lot of talented players. And he actually used for an example, a guy you know very well as a New England Patriots fan, J.C. Jackson. And he used that as an example, and it made sense because when Nick Caserio was a part of the Patriots team personnel back in 2017 or 2018, I can't remember what season, he took a chance on Jackson. Jackson not only helped them win a Super Bowl that year, but look at J.C. Jackson now. He has signed one of the biggest contracts for an NFL corner to join the Los Angeles Chargers, and he is one of the top cornerbacks in the league.
And another thing I like about this 5th round draft pick is it does help out what the Houston Texans can do early in the draft, right? When we've looked at 3, 13, and 37, there's been the conversation of wide receiver. There's been the conversation of running back. Now when you get this additional 5th round pick, you can look at, addressing some of the needs at positions that may not be as deep as a running back position, as a wide receiver position. And that may help you slide down the board in terms of, well, we don't overdraft here. Now we do have a third-round pick that we can draft a player because we have this additional fifth-round pick that'll help us out in addressing the needs at this position. So, for example, this draft class is full of wide receivers. Hell, Velus Jones out of Tennessee, a guy that won at Senior Bowl. I think his stock started to rise at the Senior Bowl. He also ran one of the fastest 40 time. I want to say a 4.21, between 6'1 and 6'2 out of Tennessee. A great special teamer, one of those 5 to 6 year players, has experience. Listen, that's a player you may want to look at drafting a wide receiver later in the draft, or you can just look at this fifth round and say, hey, now we're not going to be forced to draft a running back early in the third or fourth round. We can wait to the fifth round. There's a player that we like that's projected in the fifth round that we'll be able to get. But now we can use these picks early to address offensive guard, to address the wide receiver and not overdraft on it. And so I like what Houston did, and I think it's perfectly put by you, Cody. Moving on from one of those 6th and 7th round picks, because I believe they still hold on to either an additional 6th or 7th round pick.
They got 2 in the 6th round.
2. Okay, so moving on from those picks won't hurt the Houston Texans. You still have a couple, and are we trusting Nick Caserio to do right by the Houston Texans, in terms of undrafted rookies? I think we'll be okay with him and trusting his instinct and what he's able to do. Day to day, I have been taking the Athletic Greens AG1 powder. It has truly helped me. It has helped me get better sleep. It has helped me with my mental alertness. And one thing that I like about it, and I preach to all of my family and friends, it doesn't come with a lot of the bad things that maybe other drinks may come with. Only 1 gram of sugar, no GMOs, no nasty chemicals or artificial anything, while still tasting good. It's also lifestyle friendly, whether you're keto, whether you're vegan, dairy-free, or gluten-free. And they only test with the best of the best products. So a ton of people take some of these multivitamins, and it's kind of important to choose one with high-quality ingredients that your body will absorb correctly. AG1 is a small micro habit with big benefits. It's one thing you can do every single day to take great care of yourself. Your subscription comes with a year's supply of vitamin D, which is also so important to add in your in your lifestyle, especially during the winter months when we don't get a lot of sunlight. You cannot beat what AG1 Athletic Greens can do. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you 1 free year of supply of some immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NFL Network. Again, that is athleticgreens.com/NFL Network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. And while we're talking about taking care of your health, take care of your pockets a little bit. Live on the wild side with betonline.net, your number 1 source for all of your betting stats and sports information. BetOnline is your continued source for all of your sporting wagering information, from live betting, playoffs, esports, and more. So head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and actions over at BetOnline, because BetOnline is where the game starts. Thanks for making Locked On Texans your first listen every day. Big announcement for the first time ever. Locked On is hosting live coverage of the 2022 NFL Draft from our studios in Dallas, with pick-by-pick analysis from our local team experts and draft gurus. Tune in all 3 days as our draft team guides you through every pick and every trade in real time. It all starts Thursday, April 28th, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Available on Locked On NFL on YouTube and on the Odyssey app. Welcome back in, everybody that's checking out the Locked On Texan podcast for this Tuesday edition. Thank you for continuously checking us out throughout the week as we go through our day-to-day prospects. Our process, speaking with prospects ahead of the NFL Draft. And today is like no other, as we are joined by USC safety Isaiah Polamalu. Welcome to the Locked On Texan podcast. We are glad to have you.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me, yo.
Thank you for stopping by. And, I want to jump right into it. Do you feel being the Hall of Fame Troy Polamalu's nephew has casted a shadow over you, or have you been able to embrace that and use it as a motivational tool to be the best version of yourself you can be while on the field?
Yeah, definitely. It's a little bit of both. I mean, of course, having a Hall of Fame uncle, it's going to be a shadow over myself, but I kind of use it as motivation and kind of just use him as a tool, really. Just asking for advice and just on how to better myself on and off the field.
Isaiah, with you being a nephew of a Hall of Famer, can you just talk about how important was it for you to go out there on the football field and establish your own brand, establish your own name, and kind of break out of your uncle's shadow?
That was actually something I always thought about growing up and just something that I worked on myself. Just, yes, that is my family and I love him for, everything, but I'm my own person. I try to create my own style of play, try to, just be myself. And like I said before, I just kind of use him as a tool and just, nitpick his brain and ask him questions about why he did certain things, and just, try to mimic what he does.
Mm. Now, with you being part of USC, your school, they have an opportunity to just dominate this draft with the number of prospects that you guys have entering the 2022 NFL draft. Can you talk about your experience playing alongside several of these prospects, especially with you being a safety playing alongside defensive back Chris Steele and Isaac Taylor Stewart?
It was even in practice, like these guys just do some of the most out of world things. Just having them on the field, it's like I don't even have to worry about anything. Honestly, it's just I'm worried about the run. So having those guys just lock down their sides of the field is honestly a blessing. That way I can just focus on myself and focus on what I got to do.
How good is Drake London?
He's so legit. He does, everything that you see on the field on game day. He does that plus more in practice. He's such a hard worker, and I'm excited to see how he does, and I just know he's gonna shine.
Now, I do want to go back and circle towards you. We're talking to you right now. We're talking to Isaiah. 6'4", very versatile, can play the run well, can line up on the line of scrimmage, great football IQ, a talented athletic ability. Do you feel as though you are not getting the looks you should ahead of this year's draft? Because 2019, you put up numbers. I think over 70 tackles, 4 interceptions, with a handful of pass deflections. You balled that year. I think COVID and then a lot of just things happened afterwards. You're a very great player. Have you felt slighted a little bit?
A little bit. I mean, with this past season, it wasn't being my best season, but I kind of use that as motivation, just because a lot of people are doubting me, or are disappointed in how I did this past year, or just have their own reasons for not really liking me. So I use that as a motivation, kind of put a chip on my shoulder, and just put my head down and grind. Because honestly, I like being the underdog. I don't mind it. When I show up and I surprise everybody, and I'm the talk of the town and all this. I kind of like that. Coming from nothing up to something.
So, how important has the draft process been? Pro day, combines, everything, workouts, getting to know different teams, and I'm sure teams have reached out to you. How important has it been for you to showcase what you're absolutely able to do and more on the field?
It's everything. I mean, uh, actually being out there at pro day and going to different teams and trying out for their teams, it's honestly been just a blessing. And being able to showcase what I'm able to do and being able to, sit down and talk ball with some of the coaches, like just to show them that I'm able to, talk ball all day. It's been awesome, honestly. A lot of people don't really know, how well I know the game, or don't know how well I'm able to, perform. So being able to do all that, it was awesome, honestly.
Isaiah, we opened up this segment talking about your uncle, who is one of the greatest defensive players that this league has ever seen. But who are some of the other people that were able to help you get to where you are today?
Uh, Definitely my coaches. I'll say that for sure. And then some of the older fellas on the team, Marvell Tell, Biggie Marshall. Some of those guys, they just took me under their wing and showed me the ropes, helped me understand defense, helped me understand why we do certain things, and Clancy Pendergast, he was my first defensive coordinator. He definitely helped me a lot, just understanding defense as a whole and, kind of just furthering along my IQ about football.
You mentioned that you like being an underdog. With the NFL draft coming up, you're going to have an opportunity to get your name called. Is there anything about your game you're going to dive into to make sure that whichever team take a chance on you is getting the Isaiah that we saw, I believe it was in 2020 versus the Isaiah that we saw in 2021?
Yes, sir. I think just working on my ball hawking skills, I think that's one thing that could definitely improve because last year I didn't really showcase those skills. So I think definitely showing that I'm able to start in the middle of the field and get to sideline to sideline is something that I definitely want to work on and have been working on.
I would like to talk to you about what goes into your play recognition skills. Now, you just mentioned, getting better, being a ball hawk. When you look at safety and when you look at being a football player, there's so many small details in the game that can really emphasize and impact, rather, the outcome. Things like dissecting a play at the line of scrimmage, which I've seen you do, timing routes when you're defending routes, and your overall instincts. What goes into that? How are you able, from a little league playing football to where you are now, how have you been able to grow that instinct?
Growing up and just kind of being as a younger dude, just being more talented than other people. That's kind of what it was. But as I got older and started playing high school and college, I realized that it was more of a mental game. And that comes along with film study. That's one thing that I kind of lock in on the most, especially during the season, just because, if you know a play and you've seen a play before, then you could, play with the quarterback. And that's what it is. It's a chess game with the quarterback. You're just playing a game within a game. So kind of understanding how many times a player is ran in a certain formation or just little things like that can help you tremendously. So that's something I kind of look for.
Have you been one of those players to stick around after practice, ask coach about just getting better? Let's look at some film. Let's look at some tape. Let's dissect it more. Is that a part of what you put into to be the best version of yourself?
Yes, sir. I like to get along with some of my other guys, Greg Johnson, ITS, and Chris Steele. They're all guys in the league or getting ready for the draft now. But we all kind of, sit down and just talk ball. We'll just be going over plays. We'll just be at somebody's house, just chilling, playing video games. And then all of a sudden somebody pull up a phone looking at film. And now we all sitting there talking about the game, or, if this guy does this, then I'm going to do this. Then you could have my back right here. It's kind of just talking out ball. And, when everybody's on the same page, it's just, there's no stopping us.
Isaiah, what goes into a good and a great safety? Because down here in the city of Houston, we only had one decent safety. He goes by the name of Justin Reed. I don't know if you know him, but he departed in free agency. Now there's this big hole that we are trying to see how are the Houston Texans are going to fill. So as someone who established himself as one of the best safeties on the collegiate level, can you just explain to me and the listeners what goes into a great safety?
Honestly, to me, I think the best safeties out there are ones that can be versatile. They can line up in the box, they can play in the zone, play in the flat, or they can play in the post. Someone that can kind of do it all. There's a couple guys out there that come to mind, like Harrison Smith, Darrell James, just to name a couple. But, just being able to do it all, line up over a tight end, guard him, like play in the run, like just being able to do it all, like I said, is what makes somebody great. Like if you look at my uncle, he was able to line up on the line of scrimmage and just take off, cover the half of the field. Like, so like I said before, playing the chess match with the quarterback and being able to do it all, kind of just the overall package.
I have to ask this because it happened after you're able to play football. Are you a little jealous you can get the opportunity to have Lincoln Riley as your head coach?
Yeah, I do. Like just seeing the type of energy and seeing the type of talking to some of the guys on the team, it's just a different energy and it's just a different type of momentum that he's bringing along with him,
and a new house, and a different type of house too. So
yeah, for sure that. But yeah, no, he seems like a really good guy, and I'm really excited to see how they do.
Isaiah, last question before getting out of here. Once again, NFL draft is in the next couple of days. If an NFL scout runs across Locked On Texans, they see your name, they're listening, they liking everything that you said up until this point. If you could make one last pitch to that NFL scout, what would it be?
Man, I'm the same person every day. You're not gonna get anything different. I'm a guy that just comes in and I'm always smiling. You're always gonna get that from me. I'm always gonna be smiling, always gonna be happy, ready to go.
There it is. There it is. Isaiah Polamalu, thank you for stopping by the Locked On Texan podcast. We truly appreciate it. Before we go, if you're comfortable, where can any of our listeners or viewers or just lovers of football find your social media, whether it's Twitter or Instagram?
It's just my name, Isaiah Polamalu, on both Instagram and Twitter.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and give you that follow right now. And I'll give everybody a time limit, man. I need that follow back, brother.
Yeah.
I want to mention you whenever you get drafted. I want to say, hey, shout out to you for wherever you're going. So I'm gonna go ahead and get that follow in right now, brother. But thank you for stopping by Locked On Texas, man. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate y'all. Thank you.
This episode is brought to you by Rock Auto. With the ever-increasing numbers of makes and models, it's now impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts you need. Why? Why endure often pointless or seemingly intimidating questioning and wait while the person behind the counter orders the parts on their computer, choosing the only brand their warehouse happens to carry? You have computers with access to rockauto.com at home and in your pocket. Save time and save money when using Rock Auto. Why choose to spend 30, 50, even 100% more for the same parts from a chain store or car dealership? And Rock Auto is a family business serving do-yourselfers for over 20 years. Go to rockauto.com right now. See all the parts available for your car or truck. Right, Locked On Texans in there. How did you hear about us box? So they know we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com. Thanks for making Locked On Texans your first listen every day. Now make your second listen Locked On NFL Draft. Ryan Tracy and former NFL cornerback Eric Crocker bring the NFL Draft to life every day with insight and analysis on college football prospects and NFL front offices. It's free and available wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome back in, ladies and gentlemen, to this Tuesday installment of Locked On Texans. And on yesterday, we closed out the show talking about the possibility of Aiden Hutchinson falling to number 3 to the Houston Texans. It was just a fun discussion to have because 9 times out of 10, if he doesn't go number 1, he's definitely going number 2 to the Detroit Lions. But, John, a more realistic conversation I think we should have is at number 3. Who should the Houston Texans prefer, Jermaine Johnson or Kayvon Thibodeaux? And the reason why we're talking about this, just like we stated on yesterday's show, and just like we stated ever since we heard Lovie Smith talk about this on March 2nd at the NFL Combine, the defensive line is the engine to his defense. And I know we talked a lot about Derek Stingley. We talked a lot about Ahmad Sauce Gardner. But I really do believe there is a real possibility that the Houston Texans will take a defensive lineman with that number 3 overall pick. And John, I think the biggest, most important conversation, if that's the route the Houston Texans should take, is who you would prefer to see, Johnson or Thibodeaux.
Man, this is one of those conversations. Again, like yesterday, it's kind of hard to talk about it when we don't necessarily, at this time, know how Houston is ranking players on their big board in the war room. Mm-hmm. I loved, the tape. I fell in love with the tape of Jermaine Johnson. This is just me. I think Jermaine Johnson can be a very great, for a very long time, player in the NFL. And I say that because not only is he able to get after the quarterback, but he's very good at squeezing down the line of scrimmage and getting involved in the run game, providing run support from that edge position. Doesn't shy away from it. And I also first found out about him and started following him on Last Chance U. By the way, this will be the highest drafted player from Last Chance U. I don't know if you're going to cut them a check or not, but Maybe he should because Netflix is losing subscribers as we speak. But anyways, back to the question. But when I look at Thibodeau, I think Thibodeau has the potential to be an all-world pass rusher. And when you have an opportunity to be one of the perennial 10-plus sacks a year guy, that does wonders for your defense traditionally, and it helps out other players on an offensive line, on the defensive line, and the defense in total. And so it's hard for me to pick. It's hard for me to pick because I think Jermaine Johnson does a better job in getting involved with run support, but Thibodeau, especially when he was healthy, at one point was very unblockable, it seemed like. And so I think Thibodeau is a player that Houston should roll with if they choose to go D lineman at 3 overall.
Because you made the case for Thibodeau, I'm going to make the case for Johnson. But what I would want to say is this, and it's something that started catching my eye over the last couple of weeks when you comparing Thibodeau, Johnson. And I even throw Aiden Hutchinson in this as well. I think Jermaine Johnson might be the most NFL-ready defensive lineman out of the three, and I think he's also the more consistent. And what I mean by consistent is, when you take a look at Aiden Hutchinson, his first, 2-3 years wasn't that good. Then all of a sudden last year, he just exploded onto the scene. Kevon Thibodeau always been a guy at Oregon you had to keep your eye out on. You had to really make sure that you go in and game plan for him the way he could wreak havoc in the trenches. But at the same time, John, as you just alluded to, the injury factor. Even though I don't think this should be counted against him, there are people questioning his motor given his personality. When you take a look at Jermaine Johnson, after his freshman season, in 2021 in 7 games, this man recorded 5 sacks. Last year, 11 and a half. And I think Thibodeau and Hutchinson has the more overall star potential, which, by the way, the Houston Texans do need some star potential as well.
Need a star.
But I think if you're just looking for a guy who's going to come in, go to work, and help John Gennard get after the quarterback on the opposite side of that defensive line, I would love to see them go at Jermaine Johnson. But once again, like I've been saying almost every single day on this show, this is why the 2022 NFL Draft is A, so much fun for the Houston Texans, and B, so important because, like I mentioned, there's no generational talent, but at the same time, this is a deep draft class where you can get multiple holes surrounded around this team filled.
And I would like to disagree with. I think there are some generational talents in this year's draft.
Generational? Like generational as in this is a can't miss at number 1, pick number 2, pick number 3. Like, think about it, John. The NFL Draft is 2 days away, and nobody still knows who is going to be number 1. It's not locked.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry. Let me walk back. There is a generational. Let me walk that back. But I think there are some potential all-pros, like year in, year out, Pro Bowlers and all-pro players in this year's draft. And I think, considering the amount of players that don't actually make it to the league, considering the amount of players that make it in the league, generational can be a very big umbrella for the amount of players that are year in and year out Pro Bowlers, year in and year out first and second team All Pros and things like that. Like great, always overachieving, top 3 and top 5 at their position. There are not a lot of players that do that. I think that's generational, in my opinion. So that's just me. Thank you guys for checking out today's show of the Locked On Texans podcast. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube at Locked On Texans. You go ahead and type us in, like, comment, subscribe, the whole 9. And then make sure you are subscribing to the podcast, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Megaphone, and Spotify, wherever you are listening to your podcast. Follow me on Twitter at John_Hickman12.
And as always, I'm your host, Cody Davis. Please remember to follow me on Twitter at CodyDavis_24. Once again, that's Cody, COTYDAVIS_24. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, peace.